The galaxy was vast, filled with countless civilizations and species, each boasting unique technologies, cultures, and philosophies. Yet, for all its grandeur, it was eerily silent when the Zalvarians sent their plea. They were a proud people, renowned not for their military might or technological superiority, but for their artistry and intellectual depth. Their cities floated among crystalline forests, their skies shimmered with auroras woven by bioengineered organisms, and their archives contained the collective wisdom of millennia. But none of it could save them now. The calamity had been unexpected. A once dormant star at the edge of their system had erupted into violent activity, spewing waves of radiation that destabilized their delicate ecosystem. Crops withered, their biospheres faltered, and their oceans began to die. The Zalvarians, brilliant as they were, had never needed to develop survivalist technologies. Their world had always been stable, their lives idyllic. Now, their pride kept them from admitting a bitter truth. They lacked the tools to save themselves. With no other choice, they swallowed their dignity and sent out a distress signal. It was a broadcast of desperation, carried on subspace frequencies to every known corner of the galaxy. The message was simple: help us. In exchange, they offered access to their vast knowledge and cultural treasures, things many species would covet. Days turned to weeks, then months. The silence from the galaxy was deafening. The Zalvarians waited, hope dwindling with each passing cycle. Their leaders argued in private chambers, their voices sharp with fear. Surely someone would come. They had believed in the supposed unity of the galactic community, the shared ethos of coexistence. But the reality was far colder. The Varu, a species of reptilian traders, responded briefly, only to dismiss the Zalvarians with a curt message. Your predicament is regrettable, but not our concern. The Lothen, an empire of machine intelligence, ignored the broadcast entirely. Even the Avarix, known for their charitable missions to less developed worlds, declared the Zalvarian situation an internal matter. One by one, doors closed, and the Zalvarians were left to face their extinction alone. In their desperation, they turned their discussions to a species they had once considered beneath notice: humanity. The humans were a young and unproven species, having only recently been granted a seat at the galactic table. Their technology was rudimentary by comparison, their culture chaotic, and their biology fragile. The idea of relying on humans was dismissed outright by many Zalvarian leaders. They cannot even stabilize their own world, one counselor scoffed. How could they possibly help ours? But others were less certain. They had heard stories of humans, whispered tales of their odd tenacity and unpredictable ingenuity. Still, reaching out to them seemed like a gamble, a shot in the dark when time was running out. As the council debated, their world continued to crumble. The forests fell silent, the great crystalline spires cracked, and the Zalvarian people began to lose faith. In the vastness of space, surrounded by countless advanced civilizations, they had never felt so alone. The distress signal reached Earth by chance. It was picked up by an aging deep space array, managed by a small human research station. When the scientists decoded the message, there was a moment of stunned silence. The Zalvarians were a name spoken of in awe even among humanity's fledgling diplomats. A species so advanced, so storied, that their existence felt mythical to many on Earth. Yet here they were, pleading for help. The scientists forwarded the message to every relevant authority on Earth. Politicians, military leaders, and scientists convened in emergency sessions, debating whether humanity could, or even should, answer the call. Humanity was still finding its footing in the galactic community, often seen as upstarts who had barely begun to understand the complexities of interstellar politics. Resources were scarce, and their own world faced its share of challenges: climate instability, economic inequities, and the lingering scars of past conflicts. But the question lingered, haunting every discussion. If not us, then who? It was a young diplomat who voiced what others had hesitated to say outright. They reached out to the galaxy, and the galaxy turned away. If we do nothing, we become just like the rest. But if we act, we show them who we are. The decision was made. Against the advice of more cautious minds, humanity committed to helping the Zalvarians. The effort was cobbled together from every corner of Earth's fragmented yet determined society. Scientists from rival nations collaborated as if they'd worked together for years. Corporations donated resources not for profit, but because the mission itself had become a rallying cry. Even private citizens contributed, raising funds and offering solutions in a collective effort that transcended borders. The first human ships to enter Zalvarian space were humble compared to the sleek vessels of more advanced species. Their hulls were patched, their engines noisy, and their crews were a mix of seasoned professionals and volunteers with more courage than experience. When the Zalvarians first laid eyes on the human fleet, they were underwhelmed. The ships looked crude and clumsy, a stark contrast to the elegance they were accustomed to. Yet, despite their doubts, the Zalvarians allowed the humans to land. Desperation outweighed pride. When the human team disembarked, they were met with quiet skepticism. Zalvarian officials eyed them with a mix of relief and disbelief, their gazes lingering on the humans' rough uniforms and worn tools. The Zalvarians had expected advanced solutions, technology that rivaled their own. Instead, they were greeted by a ragtag team of engineers, scientists, and medics who seemed wholly unremarkable. But the humans didn't waste time. They immediately assessed the situation, asking pointed questions and taking detailed notes. Their approach was direct, methodical, and surprisingly practical. The Zalvarians, used to complex theories and abstract solutions, were taken aback by the humans' straightforwardness. "We'll figure this out," one human engineer said confidently, despite the enormity of the task ahead. And for the first time in months, the Zalvarians felt a spark of hope. The humans wasted no time, diving headfirst into the Zalvarians' problems with an intensity that left the alien observers both impressed and bewildered. Their methods were unconventional, even chaotic by Zalvarian standards. Where the Zalvarians approached problems with precision and theory, the humans worked with a mix of intuition, trial and error, and sheer determination. The first challenge was stabilizing the biosphere. The humans realized that the planet's native flora and fauna were dying not only from radiation but from cascading ecological failures that had spiraled out of control. Using Earth-grown seeds and genetically modified bacteria, the human team introduced resilient species to the damaged soil, crafting a stopgap measure to slow the planet's decline. "It's not elegant," one human biologist admitted, "but it'll buy us time." The Zalvarians watched with cautious optimism as human-made drones planted new vegetation across vast swathes of barren land. These drones were makeshift, cobbled together from whatever parts humanity could spare. Yet, they performed admirably, spreading life where none remained. What the Zalvarians couldn't understand was the humans' willingness to adapt on the fly. When one method failed, they immediately tried another, undeterred by setbacks. Meanwhile, human engineers tackled the problem of planetary energy redistribution. The solar flares had disrupted Zalvaria's delicate energy balance, causing tectonic instability and threatening catastrophic quakes. The humans proposed an audacious plan. Using their ship's thrusters and repurposed orbital platforms, they would create controlled bursts of force to relieve tectonic pressure gradually. The Zalvarians were horrified at the recklessness of the idea. "If it goes wrong, it could tear the planet apart," one Zalvarian scientist protested. But the humans pressed on. They calculated, tested, and debated endlessly among themselves, often arguing in loud, passionate tones that baffled their Zalvarian counterparts. Yet, somehow, these arguments always led to progress. They weren't afraid to challenge each other's ideas, and this willingness to question everything became their greatest strength. The implementation of the plan was tense. Zalvarian observers monitored every step, their anxiety palpable. The first controlled burst sent tremors rippling across the planet, and for a moment, it seemed the humans had made a catastrophic mistake. But then, the seismic activity began to stabilize. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it worked well enough to prevent further disasters. For the Zalvarians, the most surprising aspect of the humans' efforts wasn't their ingenuity but their attitude. The humans worked tirelessly, often pushing themselves beyond exhaustion. They shared food and stories with the Zalvarians, laughing even in the face of monumental challenges. They treated the alien world not as an obstacle but as a shared responsibility. One moment stood out: a human medic tending to a Zalvarian child suffering from radiation sickness. The medic had no guarantee of success, yet their compassion and focus never wavered. That quiet determination, the refusal to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable, began to change the way the Zalvarians viewed their unexpected saviors. Humanity wasn't just solving problems, they were proving what it meant to care. The planet was healing. Slowly, unevenly, but undeniably, life was returning to Zalvaria. The once barren fields now sprouted with hardy vegetation, alien yet oddly beautiful. Rivers, previously stagnant and poisoned, began to flow clean again, thanks to filtration systems humanity had designed from a mix of Earth and Zalvarian technologies. The skies still bore scars of radiation, but the worst had passed. The Zalvarian Council gathered in a restored chamber, its grandeur dimmed but functional. For the first time in months, their discussions were not dominated by despair. Instead, they debated how best to thank humanity. Pride, still lingering in some corners, clashed with the gratitude that had become impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the planet they owed their lives to, it was the humans who had refused to give up when every other species had turned away. Among the humans, the mood was more subdued. Their mission had cost them dearly. Several of their team members had succumbed to radiation poisoning or accidents during their work, losses that were keenly felt by all. Yet, none of them voiced regrets. They knew the risks from the beginning and had accepted them willingly. For them, saving a species, saving lives, was worth any price. A quiet ceremony was held to honor both the humans and Zalvarians who had fallen during the crisis. It was simple by Zalvarian standards, yet deeply meaningful. A human engineer stood to speak, their voice steady despite the weight of loss. "We didn't come here for thanks or recognition. We came because we could and because no one else would. That's what makes us human." The Zalvarians were silent, their usually eloquent tongues unable to find words that could match the simplicity and power of what they had just heard. For a people so defined by their culture and knowledge, it was humbling to realize that humanity's greatest strength was something far less tangible. Over time, the relationship between humans and Zalvarians deepened. What began as necessity evolved into genuine friendship. Zalvarian scholars began visiting Earth, eager to learn about the species that had defied galactic norms. They marveled at humanity's chaotic but vibrant culture, its art, and its boundless curiosity. In return, humanity gained access to Zalvarian knowledge, accelerating their understanding of sciences and philosophies that had once seemed out of reach. The galaxy, too, began to take notice. Word of humanity's intervention spread, sparking both admiration and discomfort among other species. For the first time, many began to question their own actions or lack thereof. How had a species so young and seemingly insignificant achieved what the most advanced civilizations would not even attempt? For the humans, the answer was simple: because it was the right thing to do. Back on Earth, humanity reflected on the experience with a quiet pride. They knew they had much to learn and many challenges ahead. But this moment, this act of stepping forward when others had stepped back, became a defining chapter in their history. Humanity had proven its worth not through power or intellect but through its heart. In the vast silence of the galaxy, they had been the only voice to answer a call for help. And for that, they would never be forgotten.